Oh. Guess I should put my mask on. People ever know me though.
We are live and ready, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we're ready to go.
Yes,
Okay.
we're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. A regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, March 8th at 6 p.m. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Start with Nathan.
Here.
Sweat.
Here.
Holberg.
Here.
Morrison.
Here.
Okay, we have 4 council members present, so we do have a quorum. Yeah, and we are going to have an additional excused absence, so we'll get to that after the pledge here. Everyone will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, excuse absences tonight. It'll be both Rojas and Peyton. So they will not be joining us this evening. This time we'll go to item D, agenda approval. There's one item I would like to, based on Vivian's absence here tonight, I would like to, unless there's any objection, take item J3, which is the resolution 21-29, and remove it from item J3 and move it over to item L2 as a discussion on the policy for events and social gatherings. If there was no objection, I still want to talk about it and discuss it tonight, but I don't want to have it on here for final action. Okay, is there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, if someone wants to go ahead and make a motion on that amendment.
Make a motion
I made-
to approve.
Go
the
ahead,
agenda.
John.
I made a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, we'll need a motion first for the amendment if we can. Just removing the item J3 and moving it over to L2 as a discussion.
Did we change the way we do it? I didn't think we had.
I think what Mr. Kohlberg is referring to, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, is that you would do the motion on the agenda adoption or the approval of the agenda first for the second, and then make the motion for the amendment and follow.
Okay,
that.
yep, apologies. Go ahead, John, sorry about that.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second it.
There's a second. Okay, any amendments to the agenda?
Make a motion to amend the agenda, moving item J3 to L2. Second.
As a discussion. Okay, and Pearlie seconds?
Yes.
We'll go ahead and vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Nathan?
Aye.
Wet?
Aye.
Holberg?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Okay, the amendment passes. And we'll need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Make
Make
a motion to, oh, go ahead, Bobby.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Sweat, second by Kohlberg. All those in favor of agenda approval as amended? Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Kohlberg?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Okay, agenda is approved as amended. Item E, consent agenda. We do not have a consent agenda tonight. Please note that the minutes of the regular meeting, February 22nd, will be provided at the March 22nd meeting, which will be our next meeting. So no consent agenda tonight. Item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none. Item G, public presentation prior notice. G1, we're going to start off tonight with Willie Dunn.
Okay, there I am. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear, Willie.
Great, great. It's really great to see everybody. I really miss coming over and visiting in person. Hope to be able to do that again one of these days. I am Willie Dunn. I am the District 9 representative on the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly. And of course, that includes the this area. And thanks to Rachel for asking me to kind of give a quick update. I'll keep it brief. I know you got several presentations this evening, so I'll try to keep it brief and certainly have time for questions and answers too. So I'll just give you an update on some recent items that the borough has that I thought might have an impact on Seldovia. At our last meeting last week, we voted to extend the emergency declaration within the borough for the COVID-19 emergency. That was originally put in place in March of 2020, and we've extended it several times. We voted to extend it until June 30th this time, another 3 months. And the main impact that will have is on vaccine distribution and education and receiving vaccines and storing them and helping to distribute. I know over in Seldovia, the Seldovia Native Association has done a lot of the vaccine work, but the borough helps with coordination. I don't think they coordinate directly with the tribes, though. I could be wrong on that, but we have been coordinating with South Peninsula Hospital and other pharmacies and other agencies distributing the COVID vaccine. So that was an important one to extend for vaccine distribution, and also for the potential to receive and distribute more funding. As you've all heard, the Congress passed another round of funding that will, some of that will be distributed to local governments. So I'm still waiting to hear what that means for the borough, but our disaster declaration will enable us to work with distributing funding. And then let's see, the other big item that we're dealing with, we have not dealt with it exactly just yet, but we've been discussing it, is school funding, which of course, excuse me, which of course impacts you folks with Susan B. English School. So we've had several work sessions with the school district. Originally, the school district had told us they would request roughly $53 million in local funding from the borough. And the mayor a month ago said that he wasn't able to be comfortable with that amount, and he proposed a much lower amount, $43 million. However, at our last meeting, that gap has narrowed somewhat. The school district said that, understanding the difficult times, they would reduce the request to closer to 50 million. And the mayor said, after reworking some budget numbers, that perhaps the borough could contribute as much as 45 million. But so we're still $5 million apart on what the school district says they need for this fiscal year, and what excuse me, what the mayor has said that he might be willing to support. Of course, the final decision is with the assembly, so we will go through that process in April and May, and we will have a finalized budget by early June for our July 1st fiscal year. So in past years, the borough assembly has supported funding close to the cap, the maximum that the state would allow, although this year it may be a different story. I still support education funding as a top priority. I think it's one of the best investments we can make is educating our populace, and know how important education and especially schools are for small communities like Seldovia. If school funding is cut, there's a chance of, well, the first result would probably be higher class sizes, a higher pupil-teacher ratio. But there's also other possibilities such as pool closures and things like that. Of course, it's premature to talk about all that now. We need to come up with a firm number before we before we start discussing what the impacts will be. But just a heads up there, and let you know that I do support funding. We've had a very significant hit to sales tax. You may realize that 100% of borough sales tax goes to support schools. In the past few years, that's been roughly $30 million. Our sales tax so far this fiscal year is down roughly 12%. And it looks like by the end of the fiscal year, it may be about 12%. Really hard to tell, but the predictions are we're going to lose maybe $3 to $4 million in sales tax this year. So that's a big hit to schools. The money that is not covered by sales tax, we have to make up that difference from the general fund, which comes from mostly from property tax revenue. So that's going to be our big challenge this year, is dealing with that budget. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that we're in the process of updating our voting machines. Now, this is for borough elections, not city elections, but the residents outside of the city of Seldovia and inside the city of Seldovia do vote in our borough elections, which happen in early October. And you may have heard last year, we went through quite a bit of deliberation and we enacted a vote by mail ordinance. Of course, Seldovia residents already vote by mail in borough elections, but this would have extended vote by mail to all borough residents. And that was repealed by a voter referendum. So that was never enacted or never took place. But as a result, part of the reason we decided to go with a vote by mail is to honor an agreement, conciliation agreement we have with the Alaska Human Rights Commission about accessible voting. Several years ago, there was a voter who filed a complaint because they did not have accessible voting. They were vision impaired voter, and and the voting machines at the time were not accessible. So we now will be purchasing and or leasing roughly 30 new accessible voting machines, and we'll have one of those in Seldovia. Our borough clerk works with the city clerk on coordinating absentee voting in Seldovia. So those will be available. We have an ordinance to finalize those purchases at our next meeting. So you'll be seeing new accessible voting machines in Seldovia for the borough elections. So a lot more going on, but I thought those things were the ones that might be of most interest to folks in Seldovia. So I will wrap it up and certainly happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Willie. We appreciate the update. Any council members have any questions for Willie?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, George.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dye, I realize you're still wrangling about specific numbers on the school budget, but I'd like to hear what it is that the borough mayor thinks we could do without to get that down to the 40 some odd million he's talking about.
Oh, that's a good question. However, the way our funding works for the school district is we basically approve a lump sum, and then we don't come up with the school budget. That's left up to the school board and the administration. So it's I hate to pass the buck, but you know, if we give the school, say, $5 million less than they say they need, it's up to the school district to figure out where to make those cuts. the mayor has spoken about alternate sources of funding. The school district might be getting some federal money through the new supplemental CARES Act. There are some strings tied to that money, so it couldn't be used necessarily for general funds. But I don't think it's not the assembly nor the mayor's position to kind of decide where those cuts would come. That's up to the school district. They give us a request for what they think they need, and we give them a request, or we fund them for what we think we can afford to fund them.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is John Colbert. Mr. Dunn, is the borough receiving more taxes through Amazon and those companies that are doing mail?
Yep. Yes,
Is that
that's. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Mr. Colbert. Yeah, we did institute a method to collect taxes from online sellers. We've been working with the Alaska Municipal League to do that. And actually, Amazon started working with the borough before we actually started that system. So we are getting a little bit of an increase from collecting online sales taxes, Amazon and such, but any online seller that I think there's a dollar cutoff, any online seller that sells over a certain amount of goods is required to now file sales taxes online. So that 12% reduction would probably be higher if it weren't for the more recent new collections of online sales taxes. So yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right, I just had a comment. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm actually pretty surprised, Willie, at the number, the 12% down in sales tax. I would have thought that it would have been substantially lower, substantially more than that. I know our business here in Soldovia, we at the end of the year we ended up being down about 45%, and I think that's real common from the numbers that I heard from so many businesses. That were down, 40 to 50% from the prior year's revenue. And then, but I know some sectors obviously did rather well during the pandemic, just not hospitality and leisure. So, yeah, so obviously that, and then maybe combined, I know the airplane loads of Amazon boxes probably all equate to a little additional sales tax. So that's probably helpful. And then my final comment is, I'm wondering, I know the COVID relief package is still only a couple days, old, and it was 600 pages long, the bill, and people probably haven't had a chance to digest it. But I know there was a rather lengthy amount in there, I think, for education, according to what they were talking about. And I'm wondering, if any of that will be able to be funneled through. I'm sure, like you say, there's probably going to be some strings attached to it, but if there is a deficit, hopefully they can figure out a way to use some of that money this year to help out a little bit.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor. So first item, the sales tax reduction was not distributed equally either among sectors of the economy or among communities. I know Seldovia was hit really hard, but actually some communities saw either flat sales tax or a very slight increase, like Kenai Soldotna. I think Kenai actually saw a slight increase in sales tax, and I think the the logic behind that, or the explanation, is that with the big box stores there in Kenai, a lot of people were stocking up on items, and they don't have as much of a hospitality industry there. The hospitality and travel industry was hit very, very hard, but the city of Seward had roughly a 35% decrease in sales tax. Homer, I think it was closer to 8 or 10%, but averaged out over the entire borough was 12%, and that could change by the end of the fiscal year too. But and your second point about the CARES funding, there is money in there for schools. The school district is expecting to receive several $1 million, but it's over 2 years. They won't receive it all at once. They're expecting, I think it is, I'd have to go dig it up, but I think it's roughly about $4 million in this fiscal year. So, and of course, that is to make up for students that were left behind when classes went online. And so there are some strings attached to that, but it certainly will be helpful to our schools.
All right, I appreciate you responding to that. Heidi, do we have anyone from the public with their hands raised who'd like to ask a question?
Nobody with their hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, Mr. Dunn, thank you. We really appreciate you joining us here tonight, giving us a little update. Beautiful weather out. Looks like we've not going to be so friendly here the next couple of days, but it's a nice night. And thanks for taking the time and giving us a little update on what you know. And then, yeah, we'll just keep in touch and look forward to having you again here in another month or so.
You bet. You bet. Good to see everybody. And feel free to call or write emails anytime. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. That'll take us to item G2. Our next speaker tonight is going to be Tim Dillon with the Kenai Peninsula Borough Economic Development District. And I see Tim has joined us this evening.
Good evening, Jeremiah. Let me correct you right from the beginning. I am not part of the borough. I do
Correct.
not report to the city, the
myself.
borough, the state, or the feds. Just wanted to clear that up real quick.
Kenai
for you.
Peninsula. I slipped borough in there on you.
Okay. Well, it's great to see Willie on there. You know, we work really closely and there's a variety of different opportunities, especially in the tourism area that the two of us have been working on some trails things with the governor's office. So Heidi, could you put up my slide presentation? Thank you. So again, I appreciate having the opportunity to come speak. Next slide. Want to remind everybody that the Kenai Peninsula is a very large area, the size of the state of West Virginia. I know I don't spend as much time with my friends in Soldovia as much as they would like, but you need to understand that it's a pretty big area that we try and cover. And we do have some really good things that we've got going on, and hopefully we'll get to them over this presentation. Next slide. Reminding everybody, and just like what I was teasing with Mayor Campbell, we are not part of government. We are a private non-government resource. Normally we look at the 30,000 foot level, trying to assist on what we can do to help with economic planning and business incubation. Whether it comes to helping with people with funds, I can tell you since March of last year, we've assisted in bringing $198 million to the Kenai Peninsula from the different Alaska CARES programs. That includes PPP, EIDL, the municipal relief that went strictly for businesses, and also the Alaska CARES. And I can tell you there in Soldovia, there were a variety of different businesses that did benefit from these different programs. Next slide, please. What are we in the middle of doing right now? Well, we're working on a comprehensive economic development strategy. We are taking a hard look at where are we and where do we want to go. Without a good plan in place, we cannot access federal funding. And when I say that, I mean at a variety of different levels, whether it be the Red Mountain Project, which we've been playing with for the last 8-9 months, trying to assist with that, the broadband project, which has been going on for several years, and also the value-added building. These are all things that without a SEDS, there's no way to get access to federal funding. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? We're going out and we're speaking to a lot of different folks, planning and doing outreach, listening to people. And probably what's going to happen from this is I'll get 2 or 3 emails from folks saying, hey, Tim, did you think of this? Did you think of that? And that's our goal. We want to make sure that we're hearing from people. So we're making presentations all over the peninsula, not only with our incorporated communities, but our unincorporated communities and our tribal organizations. Next slide. We started this at the end of June, right in around the first week in July. And it's really a presentation and an engagement, listening to people. We have 2 different surveys that we've also tried to get out there. We had our business survey that closed last week. We've got a resident survey that is still open. If you go to our website, kpedd.org, you can take that survey and give us an idea of what are some of those concerns from an economic standpoint, from a resident standpoint. Next slide, please. So we've also spent a lot of time listening to all the different industry groups, whether it's been the chambers, the tourism folks, the oil and gas people, fisheries groups, maritime trades, agriculture, and nonprofits. We've tried to make sure that we've listened to all these different groups to see what they're concerned about. And again, when you write this SEDS, and we'll get to this in a couple of minutes, you're trying to do an overview that you can put these specific projects underneath them. Next slide. We start out by doing a SWOT analysis. We look at what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And as I said, we started this back in July. Our goal is to have a final product to the federal government by sometime in the middle of June this year. Next slide, please. As we've talked to people and listened to people, we've gone ahead and heard things from all over the place. What are our strengths? And whether it be, our civic organizations or schools or partnerships, people have come out and said, these are the things that we think are strengths. Next slide. Then they've turned around and said, this is what our weaknesses are. And broadband is the number one thing, at least 10-1, when you start looking at people's comments, that we've got to do something to fix broadband. And we're in the middle of that, and we're going to talk about that here in a couple of minutes. Next slide. Public transportation is a huge issue on the other side of the peninsula. When it comes to people, whether it be older folks trying to get to doctor's appointments, to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, or some of our folks that work hourly wage jobs, minimum wage jobs, and they don't have a car and they need to be able to get to different places. So this is something that we've talked to Senator Murkowski and Sullivan and Congressman Young about, and we're going to be looking at and trying to figure out what we can do to help. Next slide. We also have, what are the different threats? Hey, state budget cuts are right at the top of the list. Political division, unemployment dependency. We just wound up with, we're going to have a new package that's going to come out of the House here in the next couple of days. I believe they're going to vote on it on Wednesday, and then it'll go to the president, where it pays people $300 a week more than what they're going to make on unemployment. That's been an issue over the last year when people have tried to rehire people back, and people have said, well, wait a minute, why do I want to come back to work if I can make more money staying at home, not having to worry about going to work? So that's an issue that we've got to figure out. Next slide. As you're doing this, we've been able to nail down specific things. And as you'll see on this next slide, there are some different strengths. And whether it be the ice-free ports, or whether it's our natural resources or a low crime rate, there are a lot of specific things that we're going to try and make sure that we put under our umbrella. Next slide. But when you say strengths, you have to say weaknesses. There's also a lot of those on the list. And those are some of the things that we're trying to figure out, how to go ahead and handle, affordable temporary and seasonal housing, how to handle things like when you have your families looking and working multiple jobs to make ends meet, fishing sector's dependence on harvest quotas and things that we don't control. There's a lot of different things that play into this. Next slide, please. There's also a lot of opportunities. And as we look at this, we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we take advantage of some of these things? For example, the growing opportunities for agriculture and mariculture, some of the things with the Coast Guard that's going on, the high quality of life. These are all very, very key things that are opportunities that we can take advantage of. Next slide. These are some of the threats that people see. And again, whether it be the decrease in oil prices, the cuts in education, the lack of pre-K childcare, out-migration, loss of mom and pop shop revenue. There's a lot of these things that we have to keep playing with and seeing what we can do. But as we've looked at the big picture and we've listened to all these things, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the overarching SEDS goal is going to be quality of living or quality of place. This includes continuing to develop the Kenai Peninsula brand for residents, visitors, and businesses, and promoting expansion of recreational amenities and public access. We were recently given money from the federal government to go ahead and produce a video that's going to highlight 8 different businesses on the Kenai Peninsula. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by showing it in not only some social media areas, but also in the hotels around the state of Alaska. Most people don't realize, but 60-some% of the people moving to the Kenai Peninsula are moving from somewhere else in Alaska. So we want to make sure that they know that those opportunities are here for them right here on the Kenai Peninsula. If you look at the next slide, underneath our quality of living, you'll see we have 5 major goals that we are able to put things under, whether it be technology and communications, workforce and human capital, infrastructure and land use, business climate and entrepreneurship, or regional partnerships. These all play a very, very big role in what do we need to do to move forward. We're going to talk in a couple of minutes about broadband. I can tell you from a workforce and human capital perspective, back on the 17th of February, we released our latest resource for the Kenai Peninsula. And it actually is a website. If you haven't been there, it's KenaiPeninsulaWorkforce.org. We've been talked to from people all over the state and from folks in DC and down in the lower 48, because this new website is tremendous. It gives, whether it's somebody who's 16 and doesn't know what they want to do, or they're 40 years old and they just got laid off and they're not sure what they want to do. You can go to this website and it's going to be able to help you find not only the jobs that are open, what kind of training you need for it, what kind of money it costs, where you can get a scholarship. And also, if you don't have a clue what you want to do, you can also take an interest test to figure out what jobs out there may fit your calling, may fit what you want to do. Business climate and entrepreneurship. You know, as I mentioned, $198 million the Kenai Peninsula from all these different programs. Again, this didn't make anybody whole, it didn't make anybody rich, but hopefully a lot of our businesses will be able to open up again this next year. Next slide. What does our timeline look like? Well, as you can see, we've been through a variety of different things. Currently, we're doing our public engagement and outreach. I just throw out there, if you've got a question, if you've got a suggestion, call me, email me, and make sure that you get that info to me. I will make sure that it's included one way or the other in our draft. Then we'll have a comment period. And as I said, our final submission will be sometime in the middle of June. Next, people sometimes ask, well, what do we need a SEDS for? Well, our SEDS, actually, it's interesting. When you look at, let's talk about the earthquake. There were only 3 places you could spend the federal money from the earthquake. You could spend them up in the valley, in Anchorage, or on the peninsula. The requirement, though, was you had to be in good standing with the federal government, and you had to have a comprehensive economic development strategy in place. Well, unfortunately, the Valley does not have an economic development organization or strategy. Anchorage, they were arguing back and forth with people, and we've all been watching the news. We've seen what's going on up there, and I know Jeremiah is living up there part-time, so he sees it every morning. So the only place that had a strategy that was in place on file with the federal government was here on the Kenai Peninsula. So we actually assisted and made sure that people got the earthquake money. So when you look at Eagle River and you see the money to replace the school, when you look at some of the things up in the valley, when you look at some of the things on the peninsula, those all ran through our office. We've also been playing a big role in making sure that the wildfire money gets out, and also with the COVID-19 money. Currently, one of the scary parts is there is not a declaration on file with the state of Alaska for a disaster. I've been talking with the different communities and the borough, making sure that we all extend ours, because we've been involved in discussions that potentially, if the federal government decides at some point, which they may or may not do, we do not know the answer to this one. They may say, listen, Alaska, you don't have a declaration on file. We can only help people that have a declaration on file. Well, not only does the Kenai Peninsula have a declaration on file, but we are able to clear that money through our department. That can come through the KPED operation. So that's one of the reasons that we're so involved with the whole COVID-19 piece. And I also say, you know, it's not like the way they're doing things in up in Anchorage, but I can tell you from a city manager perspective, I'm sure Rachel would love to have another tool in her toolbox with having that declaration on file. Next file or next slide. Broadband. We've been involved in these discussions for close to a year and a half now with the governor's office. I know that the Native Association and the tribe and the city have had some discussions, which is awesome. There is a great opportunity. I believe, publicly, there's one organization that people have talked about in the public, in the news media. There's actually several different opportunities. And I believe that within the next 18 to 24 months, broadband is going to get taken care of on the Kenai Peninsula. And I think it's going to take a lot of people working together. But with our friends with the Denali Commission and the state of Alaska and USDA, it'll all come together. Next slide. I mentioned earlier about different kinds of projects and why you want to have a SEDS. You know, we're working on the peninsula right now with a lot of the erosion pieces, whether it be in the Kenai, on the Kenai, over in Seward or over in Homer. We actually have some pretty good examples of some solutions. And we've actually been dealing with a scientist down in the lower 48 with the governor's office and with Launch Alaska that I think the experiment and the trial is going to happen over in Homer, which will be outstanding for all of us. Next slide. As you can look, you know that your community has a variety of legislative capital priorities. There's 3 of them right there. All 3 of those will fit very nicely under our 5 goals. And that's the key to the whole thing. I can tell you that we're going to try and push with the EDA to help with all these things. We just need help from you all. I am so pleased with my relationship and my involvement with your current mayor. And I think, the support that your mayor and your council gives your city manager is very, very important, especially if you want to see that value-added building finished, especially if you want to see the Soldovia Red Mountain project taken care of. There's got to be some promises. There's got to be some guarantees that some things happen. And it can't just come from the city manager's office. You've got to make sure that the mayor is going to back up what's going on and not bend to any kind of public pressure on that. Next slide, please. What can you do? Well, listening to things like this, participating in surveys, encouraging participation in the community, and having people email us. I got to tell you, we had 11 different businesses in Soldovia respond to our survey. And that was outstanding. And, part of it is because we had that outstanding ex-city manager over there that's on my staff, Cassidy Cameron. And she made sure that Jennifer Giles got it out to the chamber, and that worked out very, very well. Next slide. I know we all want to say that we're different. I know it happens. I spent 7.5 years of my life over there, but we're really all the same. We just need to understand, we need to work together. And I know at times that's very, very difficult. I think that your project with your value-added building and your Red Mountain piece are very doable as long as people remember that we're all in this together. We're all in that same boat. Next slide. And don't forget what the big picture looks like. Sometimes some of you, and I apologize, I don't mean to be rude, but you get so close to things and you want to dive into the minutia that you're so close that you really don't see what the big picture is. So please don't forget what the big picture is and try and work with everybody. Next slide. On top of that, remember how diverse we are. We're the size of the state of West Virginia, which is 25,000 square miles, which is huge. But when you compare it to the rest of the state of Alaska, it's not that big. So remember that, especially when you start looking at the diversity. Next slide. I thank you all very much for your time, your input, and your commitment to the Kenai Peninsula. I miss all my friends from down there in Seldovia, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Boy, 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Good timing, Tim. All right. Well, appreciate that presentation. And I know you were speaking quick to try to get it all in there. We'll go ahead and open it up if there's any council questions or comments from anyone.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I have several questions, but I'm only going to ask one right now. So Tim, do you recommend then an emergency declaration be in place for Seldovia?
Without a question. Again, you know, depending on how you use it, I think the Kenai Peninsula and the 6 incorporated communities have done a great job with how they've used it. And just remember, it's just another tool in your toolbox. I would highly recommend it. And if you've got folks that have questions, Bobby, please have them call me. I'd be more than happy to chat with them.
Okay. Yeah, the stuff I was reading, there was a couple things that were didn't jive, but I got the basis of it, obviously. And I was just trying to figure out which would be, I mean, I thought the same thing. So, okay, thank you. And thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting.
You're welcome, Bobby.
Anyone else?
Good presentation. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, one last comment before I go. You've got an awesome city manager. She's doing a great job interacting with the other city managers and with the rest of the folks in the state. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave her a good thumbs up. And between her and your city clerk, you guys got a great team there. So congratulations, and let me know what we can do to help and support them.
Yeah, Tim, we really appreciate that. I know Rachel's taking a real active role, and of course Heidi always takes an active role. So we are super fortunate to have them. And yeah, we appreciate you. You know, I'll just make a comment here, and then we'll see if there's anyone from the public that has their hand up there. But yeah, I know we've you know, what you guys do over there is incredible for the Kenai Peninsula. Lots of opportunities for you know, businesses and municipalities to you know, find revenue sources and a stream from your organization. You know, it's not without hard work and planning, but obviously we have the opportunity, if we can all put our heads together and collaborate. I know specifically on these 2 projects you mentioned, with the value-added building and the Red Mountain Road opportunity, which is an incredible opportunity. You know, when you talked about promoting expansion of recreational opportunities and public access, and I can't imagine a more, you know, amazing opportunity on the Kenai Peninsula if that thing were to get you know, opened back up for the future. But yeah, we want to keep. We know that there's funding opportunities. I obviously will do what I can to work with you and your office and the city manager, and then, you know, pull the council in and try to give you guys all the backing and you know, whatever planning. And if we need to reach out to the tribe or SNA or any other entities that we need to get in the loop, we're certainly going to do that and see if we can't. You know, we should be all be able to collaborate and come up with a plan here that puts it in the box so that you can wrap it and send it off. So maybe easier said than done, but we're going to try.
Sounds good to me. And I look forward to sitting down and chatting with you next Wednesday or Thursday night up in Anchorage.
Yeah, sounds good. I really appreciate it. Heidi, anyone from the public have any questions for Tim?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Tim. Well, thank you for the presentation. A lot of good information there, laid out really well. And again, we appreciate your time tonight, and I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye now.
All right, that's going to take us to item G3. And Heidi, hopefully they're able to yeah, I see Senator Steve. I see both of them must have finished their other meetings. So item G3 tonight, we have Senator Stevens and Representative Stutes with us to give us our legislative update this evening. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Usually the senator and I are both in the same vicinity, so it's easy for us to tag team it. So
Good.
I will defer to our illustrious senator and allow him to go first.
Outstanding.
Is he there?
Maybe he's eating dinner.
Maybe. Well, if he gets on, he can interrupt me. How's
Okay.
that?
Sounds good. We'll let you stop there. Let's see. All right, we'll let you go ahead and start then.
Okay. Yeah, if the senator gets on.
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay, there we go. All
I
right.
just had to push the right button. So thanks so much, Louise. Good chance to talk to you guys. Really do appreciate it. You know, I think first you should know that I'm sure you are as proud as I am that Louise is the Speaker of the House these 2 years, this year, next year coming up, and she's doing a wonderful job. It's just always been a pleasure to work with Louise. We're all facing the same issues, the House and the Senate right now. We're about halfway through, and we're having committee hearings, working on bills, working on the budget. Don't know what exactly is going to happen on the Federal CARES Act, but also hoping that we can have a capital budget. You know, the governor has proposed one, and so we're certainly hoping to be able to get as many projects as we can for the communities in our district. So I think that's where we are right now. Things are moving along and have started off well, and I'll turn it over to Louise and try to answer any questions you may have.
I think that we're on about the same page. We're working hard on getting a disaster.
Well, we lost you there for a second. Heidi, can you guys hear?
No.
No, we lost your volume.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, there we go.
Okay, sorry, this phone or this video was ringing. What I was saying was, done it. I'm getting a disaster declaration over to the Senate. So we can, I heard you a little earlier speaking about the disaster declaration, and we're working on getting one to the Senate by the 12th of March is our high hope. So we don't lose the benefit of some of the medications that we have. Sorry, doggone it. Anyway. Honey, wait a minute, excuse me. Gary, you take it. It's my granddaughter.
Sure.
Honey, I
think
gotta call you back.
There's a granddaughter on the phone there.
Right.
We gotta, that's the most important thing right now. So
Okay.
yeah, we're working on the same thing. This disaster declaration, you know, is really crucial. And part of the problem we're finding it to go around it as the governor wants us to do to avoid calling it a disaster, which it has been a disaster, but to go around it the way the governor wants means that we don't really know what we don't know. And there could be some things out there that are not being covered. For example, in hearing from processors, they're concerned about having access to testing equipment and testing machines. And they're also concerned about the many communities that they are in and having to comply with different rules from different communities. So the disaster declaration does solve that. So Louise, back to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for pitch hitting for me, my favorite senator. And so we're hoping that comes out of Hess tomorrow, and it goes right to finance, and they're working on getting it out right away so we can get it over to the Senate to marry up with their bill. and hopefully get it moving forward and have it all tied up by the weekend. That's one of our big things. And then unfortunately, or as the speaker, I had to give up a lot of my committees, but I just want my Seldovia friends to know that I will never give up on the Alaska Marine Highway System. That's at the top of my list. So never fear.
Or fisheries for that matter, Louise,
Oh,
right?
yes. Right. I had to pass the gavel, but the gal that I passed the gavel to on fisheries, the deal was she runs everything through me. So I feel really good. She's a good gal on fisheries. She's fair. She's educated. We were successful in keeping the king salmon situation there in Seldovia, which I'm excited about. We were very successful today in preventing the Board of Fish from stacking their meetings for this year. I have, as I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, Matt Greening, who was my fisheries aide and is my chief of staff. We wrote a letter to the Board of Fish opposing them stacking the meetings, which they had intended to do. And we had every coastal House member, regardless of their political persuasion, sign on to that. And it was a unanimous vote on the Board of Fish to undo what they had done. And so there will not be stacking of the meetings. And of course, our big concern on that was it would have greatly reduced the public process.
Well, I know we're very busy here. It seems like a lot of things going on, long days, and hopefully we sort of giving you a preview of what the bigger picture. But I'm sure you have some specific questions, and be glad to try to answer those if we can.
Yeah, you bet. We appreciate the quick update, you guys. I know you guys are busy and stacked with meetings every day here during sessions. So we'll go ahead and open it up to council. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why did the governor decide not to redo the disaster declaration is my first question.
My response would be political pressure.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've reached the point with his constituency, the people who really support him the most, really don't want to be in a disaster anymore. And you call it what you will, it is a disaster, I believe, and so it doesn't bother me at all to call it a disaster declaration. But the governor wants to clean it up a little bit. So, and remember, of course, that he has the right to veto anything that we do. So it's going to be interesting to see if we do extend the disaster declaration, exactly what the governor does with that.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had, where do we, first, congratulations, Louise, on being the speaker. And then where do we stand at this point in time with the ferry? I know we've got the service for this summer. Now, do we have to go through a whole bunch of stuff again for next year? I mean, is that how it's going to go from year to year?
I'm hoping not. I have a bill in which I'm working with the person I turned it over to on a board. You know how the MTAB board is currently? It would be a new board for the Alaska Marine Highway with some teeth in it, which would require the administration and DOT to respond to the legislature. We're also keeping a real eye on the construction of the new Testamina. We want to make sure that continues to move forward. And I'm very fortunate because I have a lot of support in the House, in our caucus, for just that. They are big supporters of the Alaska Marine Highway. And I'm, as I'm sure many people can guess, I haven't been previously in the governor's top 5 favorite people just because of my affiliation with the coalition, but I I'm excited because he has a new chief of staff, Randy Roraro. And I was talking to him last week, and the long and the short of it is, I am going to have lunch with the governor on Thursday, and that's very encouraging to me, because even if we don't see eye and eye, we have to have a relationship, and we have to be able to have conversations in order to move forward. And we haven't had that, the coalition hasn't had that opportunity really for the last couple of years. So I'm very encouraged.
Okay, well, that's good. You keep up the fight for us.
Hey, don't you
And
worry.
We'll do our part.
Okay,
Okay.
and I'll be calling on you because it's going to take us all, but
Right.
we are not giving up on the Alaska Marine Highway System. It's critical.
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? All right. I just had a quick comment. Yeah, I appreciate Representative Stutes about the efforts on the Board of Fish for trying to get in those meetings, keeping the meetings from keeping stacked. I served a term on the Board of Fish, and I know what that's all about. And I lived in Seward at the time where I grew up, and the smaller communities are unfortunately way underrepresented when it comes to the board and where the meetings are held. And that's extremely important when you advocate to get them, in smaller towns across, spread out across Alaska. And it means a lot to those people. I know it's a pain getting everybody to travel there, and it's expensive, but it's a super important part of the process, especially in a state like Alaska, where our fisheries are shared by everyone, and extremely controversial. And it just allows people that can't afford to travel and go into Anchorage or Matsu or to participate. So I really appreciate the efforts on that. The other question I have is, I noticed that SB 100 was introduced by Senator Begich for state income tax. What's going on? Is that going over, I see, to the Affairs Committee, or?
Senator Begich did introduce that. Of course, we've been in the past been able to stop that from happening. We're in a very tough spot right now, though, of course, mainly because we're primarily funding the government through the 5% POMV. And we don't want to overdraw the permanent fund. I mean, that's there for the future. And if we start damaging that, it won't be there to help us in decades from now. So we're really concerned about that. I don't know that, I think we can do this without an income tax increase. We'll see, though, but it's getting pretty close, but things are coming a little bit together, not right now. So it's out there. It's a possibility. And I think one of the things I keep hearing from former Senator Birch, who used to always say, I don't want an income tax in order to pay for everyone to get an income, a permanent fund dividend. So, just realize that these things all hang together there. And if we wind up with a large dividend, we don't have any place to go other than the permanent fund.
Do you think, just follow up to that, is that something that you think will get traction this session, or you think,
I think we don't know where things are going to actually wind up, but finance is looking at it closely. I'm on 3 subcommittees of finance. We're trying to figure that out now. Try to find ways to cut the budget. It's pretty hard. We've cut the budget over $1 billion in the last few years, but we save some money in one place, and all of a sudden we're spending more in another place. I don't know if you saw that we are now spending more money on our criminals, on the whole system there, more money than we are spending on education. So it's sort of shocking. We're spending more money on prisons than we are on higher ed. So that's a shocking figure. And we've got to find ways to curtail those costs. So, I can't tell you right now, Mr. Mayor, where it's going to actually wind up. We're working through the details of it. Hopefully we can avoid an income tax. But we'll see how it turns out. I mean, if people are insisting on a permanent fund dividend, that's $5,000 the governor's asking. That pretty much blows the budget.
We were just talking about that this afternoon in the House, and from our perspective, I would say that $5,000 is probably not going to happen. I'm guessing it's not going to even be close to that. And I think that there might be possibly interest in a conversation, but I don't see an income tax getting much traction this year. And sadly enough, or fortunately enough, maybe because our oil prices are going up a little bit, that we might be able to make it. But people have to keep in mind, we started this year with the governor's budget with a $1.3 billion hole in the budget.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to make up. That's for sure. That's a lot of
That is big dough.
That's a lot of cuts to make in government. So, all right. Well, I appreciate the updates on that and the answers. And Heidi, do we have anyone from the public with their hand up that wants to ask a question?
I'm not seeing any hands from the public at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I do have a couple of thoughts on the budget. If you folks aren't aware, Alaska has the lowest tax on the oil industry out of every state. Yet we pay anywhere from $2 to $23 a gallon more for fuel. We live in this mythical place where you can't get stuff shipped to the state of Alaska. It costs you 10 times what you would pay in the States. You can get it in the middle of the Amazon or in the middle of Russia. For $2, you say Alaska, it costs you 15. So over the years, our state government has given discounts and tax breaks and tax breaks and tax breaks to where now we're the lowest state in the union taxing on the oil industry. It seems like we're almost to the point where we're paying the oil industry.
Not almost, we're there, I think.
Yeah. In 1982, at $22 a barrel, the state was receiving so much money they didn't know what to do with it. In the late 80s or the early 90s, when they finally got the rules changed where you could export oil to any place in the world, the price jumped from $22 a barrel to $150, $160 a barrel. And crude going out at $160 a barrel, the state's making pennies. So I think starting to reverse some of those tax breaks would be a smart idea. There is a lot of crude, 37% of Prudhoe Bay's oil field has migrated into Anwar, and that is a fact. I'm working up there. But there is oil, and it can be produced. And while I worked in that field, I learned one of the general things was we want a tax break, and you go around closing valves, shut in wells. We're producing less oil, we get our tax break. And that's what's been done. I've seen it done. So it's, you've given too many tax breaks.
We have to remember how we got to where we are. You know, right now we are receiving more money from our investments, more money from the permanent fund than we receive from oil. Have to remember that I think I speak for Louise as well. We've always taken a strong opposition to the tax credits that we're giving the oil industry. I was only one of 2 Republicans in the Senate that voted against Senate Bill 21, which gave enormous credits that we should not have given to the industry. But remember, the public voted to continue those credits. In the last election, the public very clearly said, we want to continue those credits. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with you. But the problem is the voters don't. They want to keep giving those credits to the oil companies.
Well, and then you have to add to that, when you have legislators that are being paid or on the payroll of oil companies, there's not a whole lot of incentive for them to tax their boss. And that again is up to the people. The people elect them, and that's the way it works. That's the system we have.
That's
And I just
true.
can't let that pass, that comment about, the public voted not to take those tax credits away. That's what the public
Right.
voted. So you guys should realize that. I don't know what the vote was in your hometown,
How
but
was,
very
how was that?
very resoundingly lost throughout the state.
How was that worded on there? You know, a lot of the stuff over the years that say if you vote yes, that means no. And
It was very clear. It's very clear that the voters in Alaska did not want to reduce the tax credits the oil companies are receiving. That's very clear in the election. I don't know how anybody could misunderstand that.
Yeah, it was. And it was worded clearly as well.
that,
It
Yeah,
is
I
sad.
think a lot of that comes from fear mongering, afraid of, we all have people that we know that work in the oil patch, and, and that's the strategy, and, it just is what it is. When the voters speak, basically that's what we have to listen to. So
That's right. And remember, millions and millions were spent by the oil industry to fight that budget, that item on the ballot.
Millions and millions from out of state dollars.
Right.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you and congrats on Speaker of the House, Louise.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, any other questions or comments from council? All right. Well, we'll let you guys get on to your evening. I know you've had a stacked day full of meetings here, and we appreciate both of you taking the time to call in and join us tonight and give us a little bit of update what's going on. And we'll look forward to getting another update in another month or so, and we'll see where things are falling down in the legislature there. So appreciate it. Both.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Great
very
talking to you. Thanks so much.
Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
you guys. Have a
Bye.
good night.
All right. Let's see here. That takes care of that. Let's go to item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone from the public tonight, Heidi?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have Ms. Laurel Hills.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you, Laurel. Go ahead.
All right, I'll be short and sweet. So just the Chamber of Commerce has met and set a theme for the 2021 Seldovia 4th of July celebrations. And that's going to be Celebrate Freedom. Last year, the theme, though the event was abbreviated, the theme was celebrating our veterans. And this year it's celebrating our freedom. So it's a nice way to carry over with that and look towards the great things that lie ahead for our community, our state, and our nation. So just wanted to pass that along. And otherwise, just note that at the chamber level, lots of conversation and discussion about how we want to be able to welcome visitors to Seldovia this summer and open our doors and have wide open arms for folks to come into the community. And of course, we know that helps the whole, as we have the sales tax revenue that comes with that. But we're certainly appreciative of all of the local businesses that continue to put their efforts out to supporting our community and supporting a lifestyle that's a year-round lifestyle. And just as an FYI, we currently have out of 405, 410 year-round residents in the Seldovia area, almost 90 plus of those are children birth to 18. That's a super hopeful, positive thing. I really think that's amazing and a great thing to see and reflect on, that we have families in our community who are committing to be here year round. And so just always wanted to continue to let you know that the Chamber of Commerce is working on behalf of all of us. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. I appreciate the update. Heidi, anyone else from the public?
I don't see anybody at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's see, item HI, committee and advisory reports. I don't see any. I think that's correct. Heidi, no additions?
No additions at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, before we get to item J, it's 7:15. Let's take a 5-minute recess here if we can, and then we can come back and finish the second half of the meeting. We're in recess. You're on mute, Heidi. Just
Makes sense.
There we
Same mindset.
Yeah, but we are here whenever you're ready, Mr. Mayor.
That's all I got married to.
For fake liturgy though, too.
Did you say we're ready, Heidi?
Whenever you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order here. What's going to take us to item J, J1, ordinance 21-08, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Soldovia, Alaska, amending Title 18 zoning, Chapter 18.04, Planning Commission, Section 18.04.010, created officers. And this is going to be on page 33 of your regular packet. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So ordinance 21-08 allows someone who resides outside of city limits to participate on the Planning Commission. Soldovia Municipal Code didn't address where someone should or shouldn't be living in order to be on the Planning Commission for the city of Soldovia. And so our city attorney reviewed our code. He saw no limitations to us being able to add this addition to Soldovia Municipal Code. So it'll therefore define that in order to be on the Planning Commission, we need at least 4 people who live in city limits, and now we can have 1 person who lives outside city limits. So that's the main intent of this piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. All right, we'll go ahead and turn it over to council discussion.
I have a comment.
Yep, go ahead.
We've already discussed this as far as I could tell. And yeah, I'm supporting this. So hopefully we can get some folks from out of town taking interest in this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep,
I think-
go ahead.
I think this is a good idea. There's some good folks out the road that probably would like to have business or do have business in town, and they would be interested. I'm in support of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Okay. Heidi, anyone from the public have their hand raised for question or comments?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring item J1, ordinance 21-08 back to council for final disposition. And before we do that, I'll just make a comment as well. Yeah, I think we're fortunate enough to be able to have the opportunity to add someone from out the road, especially outside of city limits, especially given the fact that, you know, with our limited population and the limited amount of people available to basically volunteer their time, I think this will give us an opportunity to help us fill a vacant seat and hopefully bring a little bit more diversity and perspective to the Planning Commission. So yeah, I too will be in support of this, and I think it's a solid move and a good part on the city of Soldovia to be able to do this. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to council for final action.
Go ahead, John.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-08.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt ordinance 21-08 by Colberg, second by Sweat. All those in favor, Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Colberg?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Ordinance 21-08 is adopted. That'll take us to item J2, action memorandum 21-09, recommending the reappointment of Kirk Zink as the representative for Soldovia to the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council. And this will be on page 40 of your regular packet. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can take this one if you want. This, like I said, on page 40 is action memorandum. The city received a letter from the Prince William Sound RCAC notifying the city that Dr. Zink's term was about set to expire. And we reached out to Dr. Zink and he would love to continue to represent the city. So he put in a letter of interest specifying that. So this is an action memorandum approving him being able to continue representing the city of Seldovia with that Prince William Sound RCAC.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to council discussion for comments, questions from council.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I'm glad Dr. Zink decided to stay on with the RCAC. So Prince William Sound RCAC. It's great that somebody will volunteer their time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any more comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I also want to congratulate Kirk for coming forward again and volunteering for this position. It's very important for us here also to be getting updates, what's happening in with Valdez. So, and the Prince William Sound thing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other final comments? All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to any public comments. Heidi, does anyone have their hand raised for a public comment?
I'm not seeing any at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and bring action memorandum 21-09 back to council for final approval or final disposition, I should say. And I'll just offer a comment real quick. Yeah, I too am will be in support of this, and really appreciate Dr. Zink stepping forward again to go ahead and volunteer his time for an additional term. He does a great job on keeping us in the loop on what's going on, and we appreciate his efforts in doing so. So thank you. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to council now for final action.
I'll make a motion to accept action memorandum 21-09.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept action memorandum 21-09 by Sweat and a second. I think that was that Kohlberg that seconded?
Yes.
Okay, second by Kohlberg. All those in favor, Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Kohlberg?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes to accept action memorandum 21-09, vote of 4-0. Okay, that'll take us over to item K. Nothing under unfinished business. Item L1, that'll be memorandum options for the city to consider for providing recreational services in Seldovia, and this will be on page 75 of your regular packet. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff at this time.
City Clerk Gagel, could you take the lead on this one?
Absolutely, thank you. Mr. Mayor, so yes, this is on page 75. After the last meeting, we had heard a request, a resolution forward to reestablish the Seldovia Parks and Recreation Committee. And I was able to do some digging through the files and found where the committee was originally established, but also just did a general research in the establishment of committees We've been through this process in the past, previously in the past, and there are several methods, so I wanted to just give a breakdown to the council on what those methods were for establishing a committee. You see on page 76, there is the establishment by ordinance where the Soldovia Planning Commission, the Equal Rights Commission, the Board of Health, the Cemetery Advisory Commission, the Harbor Advisory Commission, and I put the Soldovia Arts Council in there because it was by a non-code ordinance in 1984, but they're not in municipal code. They're still a long-standing committee, and that's really what a committee by ordinance does, is it makes a long-standing committee in the city, and it's really hard for them to be disbanded, but it's a great option if that's what you're looking for. There's also an establishment by resolution, that's for more of a short-term committee with a specific goal or task or timeline in place. We had one recently that was the Soldovia Drinking Water Source Protection Plan Committee. It has served its time, and then it disbanded, and it's done. And then there's also the mayoral task force or a council task force. Previously, Parks and Recreation would have been considered that because it was just done by motion in the minutes. You can see that an excerpt from those minutes has been attached here on page 78, I believe. But if you read, starting on page 75, staff recommends council consider whether they would like to, number one, reestablish a long-term Parks and Recreation Committee through ordinance. This option would require staff support. Staff are currently working at or over capacity, and this may have increased staff time costs. Number two, establish a smaller short-term task force that could be either mayoral appointed or approved through resolution. This option would require staff support. Staff are currently working at or over capacity. Or number three, recommendation is strengthen the city's existing relationship to the Soldovia Recreational Service Area, where there is both interest from the board in exploring this opportunity with council and resources. For example, a paid staff member to help facilitate recreational opportunities off the South Campus. Out of the three actions, this would take the least amount of staff time and support, as the city already has an employee dedicated to this effort. And that is something that the city manager had brought to the board at the previous SORSA meeting. So that's something that could be discussed further if that was something that council wanted to proceed. I recommend, as the city clerk, that if the council does want to proceed with the establishment of a long-term or reestablishment of the long-term Parks and Recreation Committee. It's been on my list for a while that we should also put in ordinance just a general rules and guidelines procedures for all boards and committees of the city of Soldovia. And that should probably come at some point in the future, whether they're established or not. But the question for today is which direction would the council prefer to go at this junction, would you, and that being those three options.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Appreciate that. So we can, looks like we've got some, a couple questions before us here. Basically, it's laid out pretty good under the staff recommendations based on our previous discussion and where we're at today in terms of options for the city to consider for providing recreational services, in Soldovia. So we've got the three options there, and then there's different ways we can go about doing either of those. But I think we probably need to just look at those three and then discuss what you guys want to do on that, and then we can just keep the ball rolling and keep things moving forward here. So we'll go ahead and open it up to council for comments or questions and discussion.
Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
What would be the composition of the long-term Parks and Rec Commission? Are you talking about all council members, or would it be members of the public and some council members with staff support? What's the what would it look like?
I can address that, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
So it would be a committee similar to the Soldovia Planning Commission or the Soldovia Arts Council or any of those other boards that are listed in the packet. As it would be made up of volunteers. When it became defunct or was no longer a functioning Parks and Recs committee a few years ago, the current members on it were Susie Stranick, Doug Heron, and Sandy Murray, who has served on it from almost the creation of the committee itself as either as the chair or the secretary. So it would be members of the community, again, being called to volunteer for another committee.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions, George, or?
Well, if we were looking at that option, perhaps we should do some fishing first to see if there are some folks out there that would be interested in the longer term option, and then make a decision whether we want to do that. I mean, if we can't find the volunteers to staff this, it doesn't make much sense setting it up.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from council?
Just John, I have, says on option 1 and 2 is staff are working at or over capacity. This may have increased staff time cost. Is that throughout the duration? If we created this committee, would that extra time be for as long as it's in place or just starting it?
Yes, potentially. So the more successful committees, the Soldovia Arts Council is an exception to the rule because they were created and established by boards. They operate on their own, which is fantastic. But generally speaking, a Parks and Rec committee would fall under city staff for help with managing agendas. They have to follow open meetings acts. They have to return in minutes. So while staff may not have to attend meetings, we do have to help facilitate public notice and just making sure that the information is coordinated back and forth.
Okay, so they would be, for all of their internal stuff, it would be on the city's name.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
So through the mayor, council members, I attended the SRSA's board meeting last week, I think it was, and they are very interested in exploring what it would look like to strengthen the city of Soldovia's relationship to SRSA and the SOC. I see this as a big advantage for the city and that we already have a paid staff member that works at the SOC, and the city receives about $2,000 a year to help us administrative fees associated with the management of the SOC building. The borough gives us money, and then we manage the staff that are operating the SOC, and then SRSA sets the policy directions. So if we could strengthen our relationship with SRSA and give them input, like the city would be interested in exploring what it would take to maintain our recreational assets like the Otterbahn Trail, that could be incorporated into the management of the staff that we have there at the SOC. Something else I want to point out is the SOC and SRSA were established to provide services that the city of Soldovia currently wasn't providing. So if we created a Parks and Recreation Committee, we would in a sense be telling SRSA, all right, we're providing these opportunities so they no longer can consider them. So by us, in a strange way, not providing recreational services, it allows us to work through the recreational area at the SOC to help us with things like trail maintenance or beautification or other activities possibly that can happen off the SOC campus. So I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that and all of the copious amounts of notes and paperwork that SRSA is going to make a motion even at their next board meeting saying that they would like to explore this opportunity with the city. And it would be nice to strengthen that relationship so that we don't have a satellite employee in office out there at the SOC.
So then Rachel, just to follow up to that, I mean, so kind of, could this work as if we chose to explore that, I mean, could that employee potentially, I mean, be available to do other things, coordinating? I mean, I think if I'm hearing this right, we could, if we had an agreement with them, be used to coordinate other events and stuff. Say if the city wanted to sponsor a race or go back to city cleanup day, any number of things that other communities do with their Parks and Rec department, which is a full-time paid staff usually, or made up of full-time and part-time employees.
So Mayor, I think that the administrator, Stanish, she has to remain on the actual campus, but she can help coordinate effort off of the SOC campus. So yes, that would be a possibility we can explore. And our contract with the borough for management of the SOC expires either in June or July. So we can negotiate the terms and work with the board so that the city can give permission or autonomy to SRSA and helping us do the Parks and Rec activities that I think the city of Soldovia would like to see.
Okay, so it sounds like to me that, I mean, if we went that route, I mean, because my idea, my goal would be to have something a little more long-term, to where and if you had a person in that position that was coordinating, then those duties would be just part of their job description, versus looking for volunteers constantly to spearhead a certain project. It already seems that that's the normal avenue or conduit for that position to be able to help out with certain types of events or activities and stuff within the community. It just seems like we would need to explore between now and the time, if both entities agreed, not saying what it's going to look like or we're accepting anything obviously tonight, but if we chose to move forward with that, the staff and the SRSA board could work on some framework over the next couple months to see what this thing would look like, and then council would have an opportunity to weigh in and vote on something like that, whether or not we want to move forward in that direction or not. Does that sound about right?
Yes, and regardless though, I would say it would be in the city's interest overall to just strengthen our relationship with SRSA and the SOC to support the city employees that we have there. But
Certainly.
SRSA is funded through a property tax, and so it's almost guaranteed funding so far. And the borough helps manage that. I think Soldovians that fall within that recreational area pay 0.75 mils each year to support those recreational activities. So it would be long-standing in the sense that there's guaranteed funding as long as that property tax does not go away.
Okay, thank you. All right, I didn't mean to hog the stage there, but I just wanted to clear up a couple things so I was clear on that. So any other questions or comments from council?
And Mr. Mayor, after listening, I think the recreational area in Parks and Rec would actually be good hand in hand. They're both part of the same thing. So I would like that would be worthwhile to explore that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, anyone else before we go to public?
Well, I have a comment.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not, a lot of it was lost in translation to me. I couldn't hardly hear the words when Heidi was speaking, but regardless, I'm getting the gist that the old Parks and Rec committee was disbanded. Is that correct? A long time ago. So right now we have no active Parks and Rec committee.
Correct.
So, right, okay, so it sounds to me like what Rachel was talking about with the SOC seems like a pretty good solution. instead of trying to reestablish another committee that, like you said, then we have to keep looking for volunteers all the time. That's getting, you know, it's getting hard for people to volunteer long-term. So that might be a good solution. Thanks.
Yeah, and going back to almost like what George was saying too, maybe, you know, maybe if we went into something like this, and then maybe the council is the defunct committee, you know, where we have an organized body where we can talk about certain things and priorities and stuff like that. And then that person over at the SOC, the coordinator, you know, does the legwork and, you know, the coordination and stuff. I think that's part of the framework I'm talking about that has to be established. You know, if you guys choose to go, you know, with number 3 here tonight, then all that is doing is basically telling the city, yes, let's explore that as an option, see what kind of framework we can develop over here in the next month or two. And then, you know, we'll just kind of work through it over the next couple months council meetings and see if it's shaping up to what, you know, what we all think it should be. And, you know, if it's not, then maybe we go a different direction, or maybe hopefully it comes to, you know, fruition where it makes sense for everyone, for the city and the SOC and the, you know, the CIRSA board and the whole, basically the whole community. So. All right, let's see if, is there anyone from the public, Heidi, that has a hand raised?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's Ms. Laurel Hills.
All right.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear, Laurel.
Excellent. So I returned to this community in 2005. I taught at the school for a year. The position that I held was cut because of budget cuts. And thankfully, I was able to move into the position of Boys and Girls Club Director for the Seldovia Boys and Girls Club. I was in that position for 3 years, and the funding for the Boys and Girls Club, which utilized the facility that currently houses the Sea Otter Community Center, the funding for that came from the Kenai Peninsula Boys and Girls Club and fundraising efforts on behalf of the club by our community. Thousands of dollars that were raised each year through talent shows and concerts and all types of things where the kids were getting out and getting engaged, and garage sales and all of that.
Sorry about that.
And can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you now. You must have dropped there for a second.
Okay, so all kinds of fundraising was going on in order to have programming for the community's children. At that time, from first grade through the age of 19 or 20, we had up to 90 children, including summer kids who came through the program. And so it was an active and engaged program utilizing that building that had been built through the cooperation of Suzanne Little, who was, I think, an assembly member, and the Boys and Girls Club, and the borough put that building in and charged $1 rent to the Boys and Girls Club, if I recall it correctly. So it was an amazing thing that existed, and it was amazing service for the community. Unfortunately, the Boys and Girls Club of the Kenai Peninsula could not continue to provide enough funding to support the staffing that was needed in order to have those programs for the children and to pay the basic cost of utilities. And so they cut the position of the director down to part-time, and that lasted for maybe another year. And eventually the Boys and Girls Club of the Kenai Peninsula cut their funding for the Soldovian B&G. The community met, the community gathered. We had 40 people in that main room together, brought problem solving and brainstorming to identify how best to keep that facility and the programs and services of it. And what resulted was Hugh Smith came up with the idea of having a mill rate that people could pay a tax to support a service area. That was brought forward to the assembly and approved. And if I'm correct, there was a contract with the city the city would administer the oversight of the director. And I'm not sure if the city or the borough maintains the insurance, but we heard from city manager that the city receives some cash for that oversight. And then you have a local board. And we saw that group, I'm thinking that this was around 2011. So the last 9 years, we've seen 4 or 5 different directors come and go with that program, with the SOC. And we've seen the programs that were offered there come and go. Sometimes there were programs, sometimes there weren't. Really big ebbs and tides in what was offered, to where you would wonder, man, I'm paying a tax on top of a city that's giving me a 7.5. You know, I mean, there's a lot of tax going on. And specifically with the SRSA, you want to see that there's a return that's lined up with the intent of why we paid that tax. So for me, I would say very firmly that it is against the intent of that mill rate to have the city take it and use it to continue city functions. That's, to me, incredibly not appropriate. And I think it would have to go back to the voters or go to the assembly for direction if we were to see that the city task the employee with doing work that's the work of the city. Now, parks and recs, you need to go back and look at, why do you want parks and recs? And this came from the meeting that was held in January, where council members said, hey, I'll step up and I'll volunteer in regards to the gardens in the community. And there were 2 or 3 of you. And that's great. If there's that kind of eager spirit within the city council, and we have obviously the Susie Stranicks of the world, the amount of effort that goes into your office staff having to support them meeting is minimal. And it definitely doesn't, and I'm just gonna watch my language, but it doesn't piggyback on top of what was intended by the SRSA being created and our tax money going into that. That's people's property taxes, to see a direct return on the human lives of the people that we serve in this area. And I just, especially poignant to me that the director couldn't even work offsite of the location. So I am totally opposed to that, totally in favor of creating a Parks and Rec committee, and I hope that works out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate the little throwback in time there with the history and stuff on that. So, question, Rachel, for you. The current employee director up there at the SOC, is that how many hours is that position?
I believe right now it's budgeted for 20, but don't quote me on that. I know that they're also rearranging hours for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I guess, you know, even in light of Laurel's comments, I guess my idea was, you know, when we look at item number 3, it's you know, certainly the intent is not to take away from their primary mission. Now, it may cost the city additional dollars as we work through this to see if that person's funded and that's their mission, their core mission is 20 hours a week, maybe that position turns into a 30-hour position per week, and the city has to pony up additional hours. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think it's worth the discussion, you know, before we jump into anything of the board and the city to try to look at the intent and the framework to come up with some framework. Maybe we can't, maybe it just doesn't work. But I think it's worth exploring and coming back and, you know, laying out some of the additional concerns like Laurel just expressed. You know, maybe that's heartfelt throughout a number of people in the community. I think it's worth having that discussion with the board, and then, you know, and bringing it back. Like I said, this is not going to be a quick overnight process, but I think it's still worth exploring.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, Heidi.
There is another member of the public with their hand raised.
Okay, yep, let's go ahead.
Ms. Crystal Collier.
Hi, thank you so much for hearing from me. I have to echo what Laurel said. I do believe that the former Parks and Rec, that was a city appointed positions, should remain as such. I do not believe that the SOC is representative, that the SOC board to be representative of the city's goals and wishes. The SOC board represents the entire area. So from, I don't know if it's Jackaloff Bay to the city of Seldovia, we all pay the tax for their board and how they run that program. And I don't think the two are a good fit or a good mix. And I'm not so sure that you could even work that type of job description into the current SOC director's job. Other than the city helping to manage that grant, I don't believe that the two should be at all assembled together in some kind of order and try to figure out how this is going to work. I think that the city should appoint people to Parks and Rec committee like it used to be. And you have a lot of talented people that stood up and wanted to be part of it. And if you do go forward with the SOC board, be in that board, you won't be getting those people necessarily to have that input, and that volunteerism comes from that passion. And I think you're going to miss out on that. And I would be sad to see that happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Okay, Heidi, anyone else from the community?
I'm not seeing any more hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we've had some comments from the public, obviously in opposition to number 3. So we'll turn it back over to council for some additional discussion and see what you guys want to do.
Well, I have a comment. So I guess I have to admit, you know, out of sight, out of mind, I really don't know how that whole thing works with the SOC and the board. And I've thought about it forever to try to, you know, talk to somebody to find out so that I understand it more. Maybe that's part of our problem. I don't know. Maybe it's just me of not really understanding the guts of the whole thing. But I do have to agree with what Laurel said about that tax. You know, it's being paid for a specific thing, and it's not just the city of Seldovia, it's the outlying community area. So I think we have to really look at that. And is that something we could really do? Maybe we just need to look at this as a whole and really understand it before we go make any, you know, decisions or whatever. Thanks.
Well, I think I think that's the whole point here is, right now we're basically in a fact-finding, regardless of, I think, you know, unless it's, you know, item 3 doesn't commit to anything. You know, if you go for 3, it basically, you got to go on a fact-finding mission and see where that's going to lead. If you go the other 1 or 2, it's either, you know, we're going to be looking at coming up with an ordinance and reestablishing a long-term committee, or we just simply say it's a short-term task force and we can either do it through resolution or mayoral appointment. So yeah, so no, those concerns are taken. I respectfully disagree. I don't like to usually hear no for an answer, and I'll just tell you that flat out. So I think if there's a will, there's a way, and I believe in looking at hybrid solutions, especially in a small community like this. I don't think you have a choice but to look at hybrid solutions when they're put in front of you. So I'm not saying it's the right way, but you know, that doesn't lend itself to, you know, a commitment there. It lends itself to, you know, doing some additional homework is what it does. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
I'm just unmuted.
Mr. Mayor? you just
Yep,
unmuted.
go ahead, George.
This 75 mil on the property tax goes to a Parks and Rec regional organization. Is that correct? They're the ones that administer this money. So if we ally ourselves in some way with that board, are we looking at spending more money, or are we looking at receiving more assets from that organization? I'm confused as to whether
Yeah, that's part of it.
what I heard
And I
the
think
public
that's
saying
part
is
of
that
the
it's gonna cost us more money and we'll get little benefit. If that's the case, I certainly would be opposed to that also, but perhaps we can negotiate a better deal than that.
Yeah, and I think that was the intent with the contract expiring this summer, was that this might be an opportunity to see if something like that, again, it doesn't look to me like there's, no one's agreeing on anything here. It's more of a fact-finding mission to see if something like this is, if the council wants to go down that road, to see if that's a workable solution. Obviously, we've heard some opposition. If it's not a workable position, then we're only left with two options, and that's either go back to the short-term task force type deal for a limited time, or reestablish our committee through ordinance. And we can certainly do either one of those. We're going to need some direction. So, and I know, with not having Harmony and Vivian here too, we've only got 2/3 of our council here tonight. So, if you guys can't, if we don't have a clear direction tonight, we can postpone this till we have a full council, and then we can talk about it when those guys are back, next meeting as well. Whatever you guys want to do.
Well, I personally would definitely go for that. I would like to wait until Harmony and Vivian, and we have a full council to discuss this further, because
And I know
Vivian
both
probably,
of them are fairly opinionated on this whole subject as well.
well, yeah, and they'll definitely have some better ideas than me, so I'm for that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would like to wait until Harmony and Vivian are both here. Also, I'm interested in a long-term solution also. After what's been said, I don't know if it would be possible to even use the SOC. So I would just soon wait. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. George or Pearlie, did you guys have any final comments?
Well, I just think we need a lot more information, about as much as anything. Maybe the meeting would be a place to start rather than the end all. I don't know. We need to know a lot more about how this is going to work, or how it could work.
Yeah, I think it's probably appropriate then to postpone this at least till, the next meeting, and maybe a little bit more information can come forward from the staff. And then obviously I know Harmony and Vivian have both been involved in the SOC up there quite a bit, so they would offer other perspectives as well. So yeah, if someone wants to go ahead and make a motion to postpone this till next meeting, then we can just go ahead and continue it on. So,
Well, maybe we can have Lisa there too, then, maybe the current SOC administrator.
yeah, and I don't mean we could. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the city manager, getting, talking with Lisa, and then, more importantly, talking with the board, to maybe float some of these ideas and some of the discussion, and then some of the opposition comments as well in front of the board, and get some perspective from them as well. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to drag this out forever, but it's going to take a little bit of homework for sure.
Yeah, okay, well, then I make a motion to postpone this until the next meeting, when Harmony and Vivian are here, and we have a full council.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone item L1 by Sweat, second by Colberg. And all those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Colberg,
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Okay, item L1 will be postponed till next meeting. And that'll take us to item L2, which was part of the amended agenda. That is the discussion. It's now a discussion item from the original J3 Resolution 21-29, which was a resolution of the City Council. I'll just read it so we can reacquaint ourselves. Of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the policy for events and social gatherings at the city facilities during the COVID-19 pandemic by removing the section entitled Prohibited Events and Activities. And this was found on page 43 of your regular packet. So on page 43, that was the amended resolution. Heidi or Rachel, did you guys want to lead off first, or?
Mayor, I can give a brief introduction.
Okay, go ahead.
So the resolution that was originally before council and the public that got pulled for discussion, the only amendment that was making to the social events and gathering policy was removing the 3 prohibited events. The state has a really great resource that the Department of Health and Social Services is facilitating, where the state will help organizers ensure events are COVID safe. And so there's a lot of support for helping ensure that. So it is reasonable that the city doesn't outright prohibit events per the mayor's request to explore that. And then we had a substitute to resolution 21-29 that was proposed by Councilmember Rojas, where in addition to defining what entities wanting to use city property needed to have in place in order to use city property, it would ask that the city or city entities follow the same guidance when using non-city property. So those were the 2 items that were going to be brought forward for discussion. And then attached to the resolution, at least in the laydown, reflects both amendments, removing the prohibited events in the policy, as well as adding that the city or city entities will follow the policy document for events and social gatherings. And then,
Okay, thank you.
and sorry, Mayor, may I add to that as well, is there's also, that was provided as a backup document to this resolution, was a memo looking at what would happen if the city of Seldovia allowed its emergency declaration to expire and what would go away with it. And so if council wants to get into that discussion as well, there's a memo in your packet that goes through that, and that's on page, let's see, that's on, it looks like it's on page 56.
Okay, and I think we heard from Tim with KPED and our senator and representative as well about the whole thing with the emergency declaration expiring. Basically, if you don't have one in place, whether you agree or disagree, your opportunity for additional funding is very limited. I personally don't think it's a good idea to not have one in place if we are hopefully going to be in line for some additional funding when the time comes. So that's my 2 cents. And I'll just, before we get into discussion here, I'll just remind everyone. So I was kind of the one that had asked, after listening to the chamber, and some folks had reached out, and we looked at, some of these on our policy for events and social gatherings. We had, when it was originally put together, we had one section in there that was called prohibited events and activities. And what it did, it just flat, doesn't matter under the policy, they were just flat out denied on city property without even having the ability to discuss or mitigate anything with those events. And again, it was the use of stage facilities for performances, speakers, or presenters that have the potential to draw large numbers of people in close proximity to one another, beer and wine gardens, and attractions intended for children where social distancing would be unlikely to be followed. And my comments last time were the same as this time. Basically, times have changed from 1 year ago till now. Obviously, I'm not advocating for irresponsibility. I'm advocating to be able to give people the opportunity to mitigate these certain circumstances, surrounding COVID. So, and I think people can basically come up with a plan, they can implement it, and they can do these things. It's been shown time and time again. Regardless of your opinion on COVID and how it is, because I know it's a very divisive subject, and I won't get into that. This is just basically standing on its own merits. All it does is if we amend this, then basically it allows the public to put in an application to do those certain type of events. And I'll give you an example. So right now, beer and wine gardens are completely prohibited on city property. So in other words, up at the RV park out on the field where there's a young couple that's going to get married this summer, and one of their up at the RV park, and they wanted to put in an application for that, and they may have already done so, but they wanted to do a beer and wine garden as part of that celebration. Well, under this current policy, it's prohibited, and they cannot do it there. So that would put a big damper on their wedding reception. So, so that's basically, that's a prime example of what this does, rather than giving them the opportunity to submit a mitigation plan and say, yeah, we can deal with that. We'll suggest people wear masks. We'll suggest they be socially distanced. The same thing that any other organization or city does when it comes to, sponsoring something where there's more than a couple people present. So, so it's pretty straightforward. So, and the reason I asked tonight to have this moved for discussion item, because I wanted to is get the temperature of the council. And I didn't feel that it was fair with both Vivian and Harmony out tonight, for us to try to move this thing forward, because I know based on the comments last time, it may be a little divisive on what comes out of this, especially with the additional substitute language that was presented that Vivian sponsored, was basically an effort to align the city sponsored boards and commissions such as the Arts Council when they are trying to do stuff on city property, of how they should be governed. So I think it made sense to me what she was trying to do, but I felt as her being the sponsor of that, she should be here. And so that's all I've got on that. I'll open it up now for additional council discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I think you were right down the line. I don't think we should just close the door on everything, all the things that were listed in the prohibited items. As you say, give people a chance to discuss how they can mitigate those actions, and we can consider it. And it doesn't say we have to approve it, but we could consider it. I think that's the right track to take.
Appreciate that. Anyone else?
I agree with George. And this is long-term too, for the next disease that comes down the pike. So, yeah, I think being able to have the choice or the chance to do something versus just straight up no is probably the better in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a comment. So are you saying we should shelve this until Vivian and Harmony are here?
Well, I made it as a I moved it over to a discussion item because the substitute language that Vivian wanted to introduce was, if you have had a chance to read that, basically it's the same exact, it's the same
Yeah,
resolution.
I read it. I read
Okay,
it.
yeah, yep. So, and that, that addressed those other entities, so.
Yes. But you want them to be able to give their opinions on it.
Yes, I'd like
Yeah,
to.
well, I'm in favor of that to shelve it, to wait.
Yeah, and I didn't want to
Just
delay
keep
it
it
2
a
more weeks
discussion
because I
item.
know how important this is to the community.
Yeah.
But I think it's a respectful thing to do, and then we can have it when we have a full council.
Yeah, and I'll have a few comments, but I'll wait until we discuss this again further.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll go ahead and Heidi, does anyone from the public have their hand raised?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council. And again, it was only a discussion. If there's any closing comments, we can, you guys can go ahead and, or questions, you can go ahead and ask them. And then if not, it'll be on the next meeting's agenda.
Okay.
Okay, doesn't look like we have anything, so we'll go ahead and move on. Item M, administration reports. It looks like the only thing we have tonight is item M2, city manager's report. That'll be on page 90 of your main packet. And Rachel, this is your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to briefly go over the manager's report, we're gonna have our Chinook Smolt Enhancement Program with Fish and Game starting first. They're hoping to come over, and so Mike Booz asked that we help spread the word, and so I'll be sharing that with Soldovia Chamber of Commerce through Harmony's participation. And so that's an exciting development, and we'll have photos that are showing people using the slough coming out shortly. In addition to some of the other material covered in here, I'm asking for council to provide me an informal performance evaluation during an executive session before our meeting on March 22nd, because today marks 3 months officially with the city. And so since 1 quarter has already gone past, I just want to make sure that I'm serving council to the best of my abilities and your expectations of me. So before your 6 o'clock meeting on the 22nd, I hope you'd be okay with providing me with your guidance on how I'm doing. And then another exciting development that we have in the works, I've been tapping my colleagues over in Homer, asking if we can improve our relationship as the city of Soldovia to Homer. And so a couple weeks ago, we had the Homer Fire Chief, Mark Kirko, meet with all of our Soldovia first responders. And there were a couple of interesting things that came out of that. One is it would be great for us to explore with the Alaska State Troopers the logistics involved in patient transport across the bay. That's a discussion that hasn't happened at least in a while. And so it'd be nice to coordinate with troopers better on how we do patient transport. Another thing is Soldovia first responders have to have a certain amount of medicine on supply, but the way that the regulations work, we sometimes end up having to buy a full case when we only need a few. And so we're trying to see if with Homer, we could possibly arrange a situation where we get reduced medicine supply from them so that we don't have to spend a lot of money on a supply we don't need. So those are just a few of the highlights out of the manager's report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one, or excuse me, Rachel, I have one question on the the presentation or a little bit, the blurb you have about Starlink with the high-speed broadband through Elon Musk's company. What, do you have anything additional to add to that? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so SVT's president, Collier, pointed us in that direction. She said, we at SVT have signed up, it would be a good move on the city's part to do that. And so we paid the initial $99, which was in their queue. And then in 2022, they're estimating that they're going to be coming into Soldovia, or will be able to provide service in Soldovia. And at that point, we would buy some hardware, about $500 worth of hardware, and we would just use City Hall as a test site to see if it would improve our internet capabilities here. And then we could consider expanding it to other parts throughout the city. But it seemed like a low-cost investment to see what Starlink and satellite service could do for the city of Soldovia.
So is that only open to register for entities, or can any businesses sign up to be involved in that? Or how is, I probably go to starlink.com and check.
Yes, it's just you enter your address and then it'll allow you to sign up. So we just did 245 Dock Street.
Okay, well, I'd like to sign up. So yes, and I agree with Tim's with when they said broadband was a major issue. I mean, we see it affects our lives every day, from not being able to hear people talk and people freezing in these, meetings and stuff, and just the ability to upload and download information at any kind of decent speed. So yeah, that's pretty exciting, especially when it's satellite and you can, you don't need a underground or under ocean fiber optics cable. So yeah, definitely exciting. All right, that's all I had on that. Thank you. Any other questions from council for Rachel?
Oh, there was one more thing I meant to bring up. I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I would like the city clerk to quickly give council an update on the planning commission and how they felt about a comprehensive plan review.
Thank you. Through the mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
So the planning commission met last week and was presented with the resolution and a rough draft schedule and rubric for beginning the review of the comprehensive plan at the council's request. And currently they have 3 commission members sitting on that commission, and 2 of which who are looking to potentially, well, one is definitely leaving June 30th and the other another is looking to maybe leave in July. So the commission down to 1 member, knowing that might be coming down the pike and that one of the commission members is busy in a move right now. It was the commission's preference to ask that the review be postponed for a month. So we'll meet back together at the next planning commission and then review that and try to start the process then. But they also, the other point was also that they would really like to see 1 or 2 more commission members join that commission before the review begins, or at least towards the beginning of the review. That way that person can sit through the whole review process instead of having people coming and going during the review. So that was their preference, was to just postpone that review for at least a month and rediscuss it at the next meeting. And I did want to do a quick plug for HEA's outage text notification program. I don't know if anybody signed up for it or received text notifications from the last outage. I tried to sign up for it online through my app, and for some reason it didn't connect with the server that I had done that. So I called in and it was really quick, painless. way to get it all set up. As soon as I spoke with the representative of HEA, they got all my information, and I received a text from HEA immediately saying that I was enrolled in that program. So if anybody needs assistance enrolling in that program, I do recommend it. Hopefully this will become, Soldovia is going to be the test pilot area for the program for HEA, and then once they get the bugs worked out and everything's going, they want this program to go system-wide, hopefully, and be able to provide ETAs during the outage of when the power should come back on, and provide regular updates through text to their members during the outage. So it's very exciting. If you need any assistance getting set up, get a hold of me because I know how to do it on the app now, or give a call. It's really quick.
I appreciate that. All right, I gotta see, just one item of note there too. See Commissioner Falvey, Captain Falvey, Commissioner McKinnon, obviously slowed and declined our take for public forum. Basically recommend that, you know, for participate in the future, that we would have to do so, you know, by being able to join in on the regular legislative process through public comments, committee hearings, etc. So at this point, yeah, it looks like that's our next option when the next opportunity comes out for public comment on next year's schedule. So and anything else comes out. So.
Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
we're losing you.
Okay, go ahead, John.
You can't understand you.
Can't understand you.
You need this Skylink or Starlink.
Jeremiah, we can't understand you.
The internet. Think about it.
Oh,
So, okay, any last questions, comments?
Mayor, if I may, I don't know if I'm sounding like a robot either, but I just wanted to translate what you said to council. Mayor Campbell was basically saying that, you know, Commissioner McKinnon and Captain Falvey have politely declined the idea of a forum in Soldovia, but in the future, as they develop the budget for the Alaska Marine Highway System, that can be a way that the city and council can continue to participate. And so I'll make sure I hear there's a ferry hearing with the budget to let you all know.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, item N, nothing. Item O, nothing. Item P, council mayor comments. Concerning items not on the agenda. Nathan.
You, George.
But
Your comments.
just a couple of things. One, kudos to HEA. The last power outage, they identified the problem, isolated it, and had the generator running in 12 minutes on my watch. I thought that was pretty good. The other thing I'd like to get some information about is the airport camera. We haven't had a webcam looking at the airport in quite some time. Story told to me was at, I believe, Flechtenberg's house, and he quit using internet or got a different source for it. And so anyway, they took the camera down. So I think the equipment is still around somewhere. We just need another source for it, another site for it. That camera, more than just a tourist attraction, was a good, useful item for anybody flying into them. You got a real-time look at what the weather was at the airport. Also show you snow conditions and other stuff. If you had an airplane tied down out there, you could keep an eye on it without having to run down there every 5 minutes. It really is an essential thing in addition to being just a tourist attraction. So maybe we should look into finding another site for that camera, getting it set up again.
Thank you, Art.
I think we've got a bunch of stuff done tonight. Very good. Appreciate everybody's contributions, staff as always, and it was a good one.
Wet.
Councilmember Sweat, the mayor's asking if you have any comments.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get that at all. Yeah, thanks to the staff for all your hard work, and thanks to the council for all their input.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Internet's garbage. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, Sweat, did you already give your final comments?
Yes, I did.
All right, thank you. As you can tell, I'm irritated. Colberg.
Yeah, it was a good meeting. I think Senator Stevens and Representative Stutes for showing up tonight. I think staff still do great work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Morrison.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the speakers we had tonight. It was great and informative, and thank the staff. It's a great meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Pearlie. Yep, and I'll go ahead and echo sentiments. Yeah, good meeting. Always nice to have the information passed on, what's happening down in Juneau. Obviously, there's some very important things going on. Yeah, I didn't realize, I didn't see till the other night, a couple people texted me on the state income tax, the Senate bill that was introduced. So that's going to make for some interesting discussion here going forward. And yeah, Tim's got all kinds of exciting things going on, so I'm glad to see that. Thanks, staff, or thanks, council, for all your discussion. And thank you, staff, for everything that you guys do. Item Q, next meeting. The next regular meeting will be held on Monday, March 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. And if we can have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second it.
Any objection? No objection. We do stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it tonight. Okay, bye, Rachel. See you, Heidi.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Voice was the coolest part of the meeting.
I'm gonna be the what?
His voice was doing that. That was the coolest part of the meeting.
Thank you. Oh.
Pretty sad.
Need to find that.
Kind of.